Hey everyone! Before we dive in, we want to give a big shout out to TACA, the Arts Community Alliance, and Moody Fund for the Arts. This season of Dance Behind the Screen podcast is powered in part by their support. Because of them, you're getting free episodes wherever you listen, full video interviews on YouTube, and our amazing guests receive an artist stipend. If you love what we do and want to support the work, head over to knowvoxdance.com. All right, let's get into it.
No Box Dance presents Dance Behind the Screen, process production, and social media. Don't forget, say no to the box. Dile no a la caja. 고정관념 일의 상자에서 벗어나세요.
Welcome to Dance Behind the Screen podcast, where dance technology and creativity converge. I'm your host, Martheya, and today's episode is titled Aimed with Purpose, Amy Elizabeth on Leading Through Dance. We're exploring how dance leaders are building innovative, community-centered programming, balancing creative vision with entrepreneurial strategy. Joining us is the inspiring Amy Elizabeth, a dance creator, arts administrator, and educator who brings together artistic integrity and strategic thinking as the founder and artistic director of Aimed Dance. Let's discover how Amy defines and activates purpose across her creative work through movement, mentorship, and mission-driven dance. Amy Elizabeth, welcome to our show. We're so excited to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, this should be fun. I want to make sure our listeners know we have done a little bit of a podcast swap. So we just finished an interview where Amy Elizabeth interviewed me for Dance Unscripted, her new podcast. So be sure after this episode to go ahead and visit her new podcast. Well, I can't wait to kind of put you in the hot seat and dive a little bit deeper on to learning more about you, your career, and what you've created with Aimed Dance. Your company, Aimed Dance, focuses on curating purpose-driven programming. How do you define what that purpose is? Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
I think in order to stay purposeful, we're constantly asking the question of why this and why now. Moving back to Southeast Texas, formerly being in Houston, Texas, which was a major metropolitan area. When we moved 5 years ago, the mission and vision of the company had to shift because the community itself had a different need. And so asking that question, why this and why now, and how does this organization sustain itself in this environment?
I think it's really important to talk about these shifts that happen. So whether it's, for those as an independent artist moving to a new city or a place like that, or just, like you said, the needs of the community change over time. You have a background with an MFA and an MBA. Can you talk about your strategic planning process with shifting and evolving your mission as you moved out to Southeast Texas?
Well, the main shift was in our mission. Our mission in Houston was a performance company, a performance art organization, and we focused on hiring dancers, giving them employment, and collectively creating work and presenting as much work as we possibly could in as many different ways as we possibly could. And shifting to Southeast Texas, it did not have the resources to sustain a performance company. The dancers, it didn't even have enough dancers with that level of interest to come in and sustain that. And so we shifted more to an apprenticeship and an educational scope. And
I want to pause you there. Could you talk about what the change in resources was? This is Dance Behind the Screen, where technology, strategy, and creativity collide. Like when you're saying you're coming from Houston, a more metropolitan area, what resources did you have there that when you moved you didn't have?
The number one resource was dancers. The number one resources were dancers who had been trained, who are interested in being a part of a professional dance company. I would say that would be number one, would be having the actual dancing bodies.
Mm-hmm.
Your typical resources for a dance company, such as space and venues and things like that, I actually was very blessed with in my partnership with Lamar University. I'm an assistant professor of dance there, and they took us in as not necessarily a resident company, but with a space grant. So we were able to run the company out of the university in regards to using the studio space for rehearsals and being able to utilize the performance venues for our performances. And without that resource, the company would not have existed.
Mhm.
There are some foundations locally here, and then there are a few, I would say basically one city grant and one a county grant. And beyond that, there's not a lot of funding. There is also, I would say, a lack of information of what a professional dance company is.
Mm.
Southeast Texas has a thriving dance community for youth education.
Can you kind of describe what that means for listeners who
Yes.
aren't familiar and are maybe not even based in Texas?
Yes, absolutely. So, youth education in Southeast Texas is for 3-year-olds to 18-year-olds. The majority of them are competition based dance studios. There is, I believe, one or two studios that identify as pre professional training programs that have companies attached to them. But again, that's age 3 to age 18. So, there's not another company or organization or institution that is serving the adult populace of the community. So trying to explain to potential sponsors or community partners that you can actually continue to dance after the age of 18 and that not all dance is in the form of a recital or a competition. There is concert art, there's the preservation and presentation of performance art in the realm of dance. And so I think some of our resources is just a lack of information and being able to share that and to try and educate our community with what that is.
And so I guess like what strategic sessions and took place when you knew you had to kind of shift the mission of AIM Dance? And who was involved?
So the company had been established for about 12 years before I moved to Southeast Texas. And the board itself was comprised of former dancers and local, and I don't want to say investors, not really investors, but partners, collaborators.
Mhm.
And when moving to Southeast Texas, actually one of my founding board members who had been there from the beginning moved to California.
Mm.
So across the nation, another had moved north of Houston. And so being spread out, I almost returned the feeling was of being an independent artist. I am in this new city by myself. I don't know what I say by myself. I mean, the company itself. I didn't bring the dancers. I didn't bring the board. I just brought my person and I just brought this mission. And so I relied heavily on my colleagues at the university to kind of springboard some of these ideas and have conversations with, but they weren't actually invested in the company itself. They were able to help me make connections with a few people. But I would say for at least the first 2 years ish, it was my board agreed to stay on kind of as silent partners while I reestablished this, made some connections, and was able to build a new board. And so for the first 2 years, it really did feel like I was starting completely over from scratch and all on my own. And then again, not because I actually am originally from Southeast Texas. So I graduated from here and spent the next 20 years elsewhere. And in accepting the position at Lamar University, I came back to Southeast Texas. And so it took a couple of years being disconnected from the community for 2 decades. It's going to take a minute to get reconnected, to find the people who believe in the mission and vision of the company and have the resources and the information to help propel it forward. And within 2 years, I was able to I have two really committed, fantastic board members. We're still a very small board of 3. And one of them I actually grew up with. She's now a local business owner. Another is actually an alumni from our program at Lamar, just finding those connections. So it took a little bit of time to find the right people, I think, to kind of help usher this forward. I don't feel that if I hadn't changed the mission of the company to have more of an educational component where we became an apprentice company, where we are training, we are bridging the gap between high school and college and professional. I don't think the company would have survived in its current state. And so, but we are now creating a source that was not here previously and being able to usher that in. Fast forward 5 years later, the majority of these dancers who have come through our training program now have degrees, are professionals, and we're looking forward to ushering in a full season and getting back to where we were when we were in Houston and presenting more work as a professional company.
That's very exciting, and congratulations. What a powerful journey. I'd love to hear more about your board recruitment process. We're kind of in this state right now with NoVox where for the past several years, we've been this like volunteer-led board. So basically our founding members are also on our board, but we're excited because we're in the stages of onboarding some new board members. But I'd like to hear more about what did that process look like for you? How did you recruit the right people?
There's not really, to be honest, I actually was going to these nonprofit seminars and learning the different pathways of how to recruit board members and creating events to recruit board members. And at the end of the day, it was just having a conversation, connecting with someone on such a human and personal level. I tried different strategies that I was taught or that I read about or I saw in a seminar about how to present the company and your pitch deck and, all of the things that I'm sure work. I'm sure they do. But for me and where I was, it didn't come across as genuine and it didn't tell our story. It really was becoming a part of the community, going to other organizations' events. One of my board members is my hairstylist. She runs a fantastic, beautiful hair salon here, being a business owner. And just having that conversation sitting in her chair one day. And she's like, I've been listening to you talk about this company and I just finished my MBA and I feel like I'm finding a place where I can help you. And I believe I've been listening to you talk about this mission and this vision for so many years. And she's like, no, I'm in. I didn't even have to recruit her. She was just like, no, this is where I'm at in my life. I want to be able to give back now that I feel empowered by the resources that I have. And so I really didn't do anything.
No, I love it. I love the honesty. And I think that's like an important reminder that maybe these people already exist.
They do. And that's the thing. The people who are empowered by or inspired by your mission and your vision, they do already exist. And like I said, one of the key things I did was put myself into the community. So going to other community events, supporting other nonprofit organizations that there's no other nonprofit dance organization in Southeast Texas. So it's going to the art museums events and getting connected with the arts and culture environment. One of the things that I did do was I connected pretty early on with the Southeast Texas Arts Council. I went and met with the executive director and she said, there's no one on our board that is associated with dance. Would you be willing? And so I signed up for that board. I've been sitting on that board for the last 5 years. And that's another way where I've met people and engaged with people. But I think it really is this idea, like you give, it's cyclical. You give and you receive. And so speaking to any independent artists or anyone who's thinking about starting a company, it's invest in the community in which you want to live. And the people will find you. Show up and they will find you.
That's great advice. So one of our focuses this season is talking about strategic planning and kind of pinpointing the tools to help build that strategic plan to accomplish whatever mission it is that you as an artist or an organization are set to bring to life. So I'm wondering if there's any specific tools or platforms that have really helped you foster AIM dance?
I listen to a lot of business podcasts.
Okay, like what?
And I listen to Critical Thinking. I can't remember the young lady who hosts that podcast. Critical Thinking is one that I've listened to. I've recently just stumbled upon. This is a leadership. This is about being a manager, being a boss, being a leader. But Radical Candor is another that I've actually just latched onto. And it started from a book. It's How to Be a Badass Boss Without Losing Your Humanity is the tagline. And going into this place of leadership, going into a full season, really trying to put myself out into the world. And a lot of what I do is mentorship. And so I'm constantly trying to find new ways of being a better mentor. I will say that when it comes directly to strategic planning, a few years ago, I read The Strategic Planning Revolution, I believe is the name of the book, or The Nonprofit Revolution. That's what it is, The Nonprofit Revolution of Strategic Planning. I will get the title for you. I read that book and it shifted the way that I saw strategic planning. But I also have to preface all this by saying that none of it is in writing right now.
Oh,
So
interesting.
yeah. So because the company right now, like I said, we're shifting into the full season, we are actually in our design process right now. And
I-
what does this look like? And what are our options?
Well, we've had strategic plans in the past, but we were a part of this Arts Accelerator program for the past 9 months where they kind of like walked us through they called it like a mini MBA, and I put that in air quotes. So we are basically given all the right language and templates, if you will, on how to like build out our strategic plan. So we're very proud of our new strategic plan. We even have it on our website, and that's what this whole season is kind of geared around. So I'd love to hear about what are the conversations you all are having internally right now when you're thinking about your goals and what you want to accomplish.
Create, discuss, and advocate for art. No box dance.
I think right now it's about programming and then connecting. What does year-round programming look like for us? So what I mean by that is for the last 4.5, 5 years, we've worked around the academic schedule, and we've done a winter project. We've done a summer project. We actually host a 2-week summer dance festival here in Southeast Texas that includes a summer dance intensive. It includes drop-in classes, a curated concert. We invite artists to come in. We also host an emerging choreographer fellowship where they come in and they get to set work on the company. We create those resources in that space for them to be able to do that as young artists, most of them recently graduating and losing the space and the time and the finances and the bodies and things like that in order to create. And so right now, everything is coming from why this, why now? What is our impact? How does this carry over? And then the next part is, so it's the programming is the first conversation is what programming are we going to offer if we go year round? And then what impact is that programming going to make? And then the second conversation is about the connection with the community and how does this support the community at large and not just our own organization. And then after we get past the why, then we're going to start talking about the how. And it's, well, how are you going to do that? The first question out of anyone's mouth is, how are you going to do that? I'm okay with not knowing the how immediately. I'm okay with the how revealing itself through conversations, through community, through connection. But if you don't have your why first, then none of the rest matters. You're going to get lost. And so right now, the conversations are, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it now? Is it something that can wait? How does this link with our mission right now? And going back to that. And I'm not sure if it is wise or not, but part of that how is the funding, the resources. And so again, I don't know if this is a wise thing to do, but yeah, that's the last thing we think about. It's the last conversation that we have is the nitty gritty.
Yeah, we can certainly relate to that. I think it's like the famous TED Talk by Simon Sinek. It starts with why, and then there's
Starts with why.
and all that. And that's some of the work that we've been doing, like I talked about in this class the past 9 months, is kind of going back to what is our why? And then from there, developing out the strategic plan, which then, like you said, answers the question about then how do we actually make this all happen? And this leads me to some questions I have about funding. And I think at the end of the day, like whether you are an independent artist or you are an institution, funding is an integral part of sustainability. That's just, it is the way it is. So I'd love to kind of hear about your experiences with funding, whether it's like with grants specifically, or if you have like different avenues to secure earned revenue for AIM Dance. I know like sometimes, and as you were talking about your experience, like starting with the why, sometimes like when you apply for a grant, you kind of box yourself in to like these concrete ideas. And we were talking on your podcast about how incredible it is that you actually secured grants for your podcast, Dance Unscripted. And that's something that we've kind of struggled to get specific funding for. We've had funding for our organization, of course, as a whole, but we haven't been able to secure grants for Dance Behind the Screen podcast because of the nature of it being a podcast and kind of living in the digital space. So I'd kind of love to hear more about your strategy for the how, even though I understand that you all aren't there right now, but you did it for the podcast and you've done it before. So do you have advice to our listeners on how do you kind of decide which funding route is right for your project? And then once you decide, like, what are the steps that have worked for you to secure that funding?
Well, I will say, fortunately or unfortunately, my resources down here are actually quite limited. And I was able to secure funding for the podcast through the university. So being a part of Lamar University faculty, being able to apply for a grant through the Center for Resiliency. And what we had to do was tailor the podcast to fit within the mission of the Center for Resiliency and how that fits within creative research for professors. So, being a professor at Lamar University and my field being dance, and then finding topics that are relevant to the center themselves and how that would advance my field through this project. So I don't feel that I necessarily would have succeeded in getting funding from the resources that I have locally.
Did you have the podcast conceptualized before finding this funding, or did you see this funding opportunity and then kind of conceptualize the podcast?
I had the podcast idea. I was looking for ways to connect with the greater community of dance. Southeast Texas is small, and there is a small group of artists that are here. They're super encouraging and empowering, but sometimes I feel, due to my geographical location, that I'm disconnected from the dance industry. And I got to a point where I felt like the industry was passing me by.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there are all these advancements happening. There's all this research happening. We were talking about archiving and preserving dance, and there is a whole wave. And I'm thinking, but why is this important and why now? I always ask myself that. And so I had the idea of the podcast as a way to engage with the community within the resources that I had. I can't necessarily fly to every conference or every event. And so having a podcast is that link. Living in this digital space is the link for me to be able to stay in connection with. And I also, as a creative person, I'm very curious and I have a lot of questions and I love talking and asking questions about dance. And I thought this is the perfect platform for me to be able to do that. So I did have the podcast idea in mind, and AIM Dance was ready to move forward with that, but we didn't know our help. And then I saw the invitation to apply for this grant. And I thought, no, this is perfect because resilience is a huge part of what we do. I would love to talk to people about that. So it was just a little bit of a steering our topic for the season. Otherwise, I still feel like I'm able to get out. My why is still there. My why is still there. My why is still solid. But it's just one of those let the how reveal itself. But as far as funding goes, right now AIM Dance is primarily funded by individual contributions. That is our top resource. In the last 2 years, we've been applying for grants here locally for about 4 years now. And in the last 2 years, we started to see acceptance. And I think, again, it's diving into the community. They are local grants.
Right.
They want to know, you just got here. Is this sustainable? Is this something
Proof
we
of
can invest in?
concept.
All of these things. And we're just now starting to see that the community investment in response to what it is we're doing here. And it's really encouraging us to keep moving forward. I think that answered the question.
Yeah, definitely. You're listening to Dance Behind the Screen podcast. Let's explore the future of dance together. I'd love to talk to you more about how you facilitate like a culture of individual donors. And I ask that because at No Box Dance, we're based in Dallas. That's where our headquarters is, even though we have programming in Seoul, Korea, and in Mexico City, in Mexico. Our HQ is here in Dallas, Texas. So we're very fortunate, similar to your experience in Houston. We're in a big metropolitan city, and there's so many different ways for us to secure funding, both locally, federally, private foundations, things like that. But one thing that we haven't done a really great job at, honestly, is kind of building out this individual donor portfolio and community. Just because I guess maybe our backgrounds, like coming from an MFA program and feeling confident in our ability to communicate our ideas in writing has been easier for us. Kind of like, it's like a research paper, that you're submitting to get these grants. So that's been really easy for us. And more recently, we've kind of been challenged with how are we communicating what we're doing in different ways, whether it be, on our website, social media, YouTube, things like that. So I'd love to hear more about your experience in cultivating individual donors and what does that look like? Do you have a big event each year? Are you calling people on the phone?
I feel like with each area, with each community that you're engaging with, it's going to be different.
Well, right. And your mission is kind of central to like, who are the bright people that are going to believe in and support your mission with their dollar? And so I'd just kind of love to know like your thought process around that as we're trying to figure out our own strategies and processes for increasing our earned revenue.
Who is your audience would be the first question that I would ask, because a lot of our individual donors, they are our audience. They have come to multiple events. A lot of them know someone who benefited from the company. Like I said, we changed over to an apprentice company. Apprentices come with parents. And even though those apprentices have moved on, those parents saw the result of the investment of the cyclical relationship that we had. And so they have become permanent donors to the organization.
And what does that actually look like in like a tangible way? Meaning like, are you emailing them like every month saying, please, continue your donation, or like, how do you facilitate that relationship and maintain it?
We do have an event at the end of every year. Well, we've done it for the last 2 years now. So we do a holiday happy hour in December, and it's free beer and wine, some sweet treats. And we invite everyone who has walked through our doors that we captured their information. We also invite local partners or people we want to be our partner. And it's a very casual, come as you are. We don't ask for donations at this event. This is an information event. We do ask for donations on the way in. And so if someone wants to give that money, whether it be $20 to get in, $5 to get in, $250 to get in, like you get to choose what your contribution is to get into this very casual event. We typically do a raffle and a gift grab. So it's which one excites you the most. So the gift grab has been actually, it's fun. It's so fun.
What is
It's
a
almost
gift grab? I don't feel like
so
that is.
it's we have products, items, presents that are gifted to us and they are already wrapped. And so on the table, there is just a little sign that says, this is what it could be, but you don't know what it is. And it's just a flat $20. You pay $20 and you get to put your hand under the tree and pull out a random gift. And it's so much fun to see what people actually get. And then we encourage them. You can do a gift exchange right now. Sir, if you don't have anyone to give that facial product to, that young lady over there might be willing to exchange with you. So it becomes like this
I
really
love
casual,
it.
fun game. And then there's also like the raffle. Those are going to be your higher donations. And you get to see, like, some people really don't like the surprise element of it. So they want to see. And so we have like casual fundraising games that happen. And then the company will perform 2 to 3 of the works from our rep for that season. And again, it's very casual. You put the mic in my hand. I tell you our why. One of our board members gets up, shares their moment of gratitude. And that's been a lot of fun recently. And it's an entryway for those who may want to get involved, but don't want the direct ask or, they come and see the show and then they just kind of scurry away at the end. They don't really know how to engage. And so it gives them a casual way to engage. So if anyone has donated in the past, they get an email towards the end of the fiscal year in order to donate. But as far as direct asking, I'm terrible at it. I'm terrible at picking up the
Me
phone and
too.
saying, you really shouldn't buy into my company. It's
Me
like,
too.
I'm so terrible at it. I don't like asking. I want our donors, partners, collaborators to find their way in. And so creating as many ways as possible for them to find their way in, whether it be like during Summerfest, we do pre-show art talks, which I know it's not most people, you watch the dance and you do a post-show talk
Mhm.
and that's engaging. But what we've realized in our area is that people had more questions walking out than they did walking in. And so we flipped the script to see if this could empower our audience to engage with the work in the moment a little more. And so if people are interested in the art itself, in the creative process, where we interview 2 artists, that guest artists, the ones that are coming in from out of town, for about 15 minutes before the show. And then we invite the artist and the audience into the lobby for like a little post-show casual. If you want to stay, stay. If you don't have to have another beverage, go meet a dancer. So we're constantly encouraging them to meet the dancers, meet the artist, stay after, come early, and to ask questions. So it's really just helping them try to find their access point into what it is that we're doing.
I love that. And it sounds like you have such a clear concept of the culture for AIM dance in everything that you do. And kind of having this comfortable nature as a through line seems to be really powerful for the work you all are doing.
Thank you for that. I like to think that I'm a casual person, but I think that's a reflection of the fact that fine arts in this area is more of a question
Mm,
than anything. There is, we've heard of this idea of elitism in dance or
Right.
elitism in performance art.
Definitely.
And for my community growing up, I did not have a lot of access to the arts as a young person growing up. I have no idea how I became an artist because I wasn't going to see performances. I wasn't going, I mean, in the last 7 years, my partner is an actor. And so in the last 7 years, I've been introduced to theater, to live theater. And I watch a play like a little 10-year-old because I didn't have access to it before. How do you tell a community they need something that they've never even been exposed to before or have limited exposure to it? And if they do have exposure to it, they don't really feel as if they belong. And so for me, it's if this is going to work in this community, then everyone needs to feel as if they belong. And the way they feel that they belong is that they are your neighbor and they are your friend. And there's also this concept of making people feel as if you want something from them. And I never want my audience to feel as if I want something from them. Do I need to approach every situation? Do I need to engage in every conversation with the two of us knowing I want something?
It doesn't have to be transactional.
It doesn't. It needs to be personal.
Hmm.
The arts are a human activity. It is a part of who we are as humans. And so engaging with the audience, engaging with these quote unquote donors, are they being seen? Are they being heard? What is their why in this community that we have? I think that's what's important is we talk so much about what is the organization's why. What is the why of the people who are engaging? What is the why of the people who are donating? What are they getting out of this? I think that's important.
Definitely. And Amy Elizabeth, you've talked about the importance of mentorship that you facilitate. And I'm wondering, as a mentor on the mic right now, what advice do you have to offer to those who are listening who are really working at the intersection of creativity and the arts?
Whew. I don't know. If I had to say one thing, it's going to be very cliche, but stay curious. Stay curious. We talk a lot with my students and with I have a group of interns. We have a production team, administrative team, and then, of course, the dancing team that work within the company. And we talk a lot about the fact that there is no right or wrong. And if we can believe that within our small community, then we can make progress. You can make a clearer choice. You can make a different choice, but you can't be wrong. There is no right choice because you don't actually know what the result is going to be. You cannot define anything as the right choice. It may be a clearer choice. It may be a more profitable choice, but you cannot be wrong. I think giving young people permission to just move forward and see what happens. Yeah, stay curious and don't. I was about to say, don't put yourself in a box. But that's kind of the idea as young people. How do we get our information as young artists? We first do what we know. And that's what we're taught. We second, we do what we see. It's what we see other people do. And then once we've exerted all of those efforts, then I think we can find a pathway for innovation. And innovation just means our voice and the way that we are going to pursue that idea.
That's a lovely segue to our tagline. Our tagline here at No Box Dance is say no to the box and yes to the future of dance.
Mm-hmm.
How do you say no to the box and yes to the future of dance?
Radical curiosity, I would say. Just, again, I know it does sound cliche, but this idea of just being radically curious about what the possibilities are. I do feel that history and background is important in the sense that I've always told myself that you can't break out of a box if you don't know what the box is made of and what lies inside of the box. How can you be truly innovative if you don't know what comes before? And so I think continuing to learn, continuing to enhance what it is that I already know, and then observing others. What worked, what didn't work, what were the possibilities, what were the options that were explored, what were the options that were not explored. And then I think we can, then once we see all of our tools, all of our options laid out in front of us, we can make the clearest choice in that moment. Whether that be for the structure of an organization or in dance making, we have this theme, we have this idea, we don't necessarily know how we're going to move forward with it. So what are all of our options? What are our avenues? Where are we going to research? What are we going to reach out to enhance what we already know? And then also using the resources we have in the room to propel something forward.
Amy Elizabeth, is there anything that we haven't talked about today that you want to make sure you share with our listeners?
Honestly, I feel so privileged to be here and to be able to even talk about my why and to share my why with your audience. I am super excited about the launch of our new podcast, Dance Unscripted, and being able to share those conversations, that information is revolutionary for us. I mean, I know No Box is in their 7th season. Congratulations for that. Yes. Going in, I think taking on this challenge and this task and trying a different avenue that we're not necessarily familiar with. It is kind of revolutionary for us. And I'm really looking forward to making connections and building that community.
And welcome to the Dance Podcast family. We're so excited and we're glad we could make this podcast swap happen. And you're welcome back on our show anytime, Amy Elizabeth.
Flash 4.
Before you go, we have our Flash 4 segment. This is where we ask all our guests to answer 4 questions in a flash. So as fast as possible. Are you ready?
I'll do my best.
All right, here we go. If you had to recommend a resource to our audience, what would it be?
My number one go-to resource for information is actually dancesourcehouston.org.
Awesome.
I mean, I know it's geographically located to me, but they're in the know.
What was the first dance you saw?
I don't remember the first dance I saw, but I will tell you the first dance.
Okay.
I actually was in school for undergrad, and I had never seen modern dance before. And I was working the alumni concert. I was going in as a double major in dance and English, and I was going to be a drill team director. And then this woman named Lisa Nix, who is based out of Austin, Texas right now, stepped onto the stage and did a solo with a red chair. And I looked at my roommate and I said, I have no idea what that was, but I want to do that.
I love it.
And it shifted. And from then on, I've been training in modern dance.
And here you are.
Here we are.
Do you think social media has a positive influence on the dance world? Yes or no?
I think so, yes. I believe it does have a positive influence because we are talking about this idea of connection and building community. And I have found the largest connection with a broader community through social media platforms.
What's your favorite social media platform?
Instagram.
Great. Well, Amy Elizabeth, again, thank you so much for coming on our show, doing our podcast swap. It's been so fun. We've kind of got to spend the whole afternoon together talking about all things dance, which I love, and I know our audience is going to love it just as much as I did. Thank you for sharing about your work with AIM Dance and everything that you're doing in higher education and building community. I think it's so important and valuable to hear your steps for strategic planning and the why, the how. All of that really matters. And we appreciate you taking the time to just share your journey with dance and the arts.
Yes, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is fun.
That's wonderful. And to our listeners, we hope today's episode inspires you to lead with clarity, collaborate with intention, and continue saying yes to the future of dance. How can our listeners stay connected with you, Amy Elizabeth, and all the work that you're doing?
Our website is aimeddance.org, and we are also on Facebook and Instagram at AIM Dance.
Wonderful. We'll link everything out in the show notes. And as always, keep dancing behind the screen. See you next time. From No Box Dance, I'm Martheya. Stay curious, stay creative, and keep moving forward.
Thanks for taking your time to tune into Dance Behind the Screen, a bi-monthly interview series where we go behind the screen to question process, product, and social media. Be sure to follow us on social media at KNOW Box Dance. See you next time, and don't forget to say no to the box.